So today I'm going to do some prep work for my YouTube channel, and I'm going to practice the pronunciation of hard words using the Google Docs speech writing thing. And I'm going to tell you something about my writing project over here and writing in general, because you don't care about my writing at all. So let's start talking about writing. Writing is hard. It's hard to create a comprehensive whole out of just words. Writing has the same basic principle as making a painting, where each word contributes to a whole picture, like the brushstrokes in the painting. You understand? And it's very hard actually to make that kind of writing to happen, because usually words just don't work like that. Words just don't work like that. We don't have a proper connection between the verbal and the visual brain, because the verbal brain is so much more is a completely different animal from the visual brain. It's the question of creation versus consumption. A consuming brain could never write a comprehensive whole, because the consuming brain would not be able to create that picture out of those words. So you could think that writing is really about creating word paintings, if it's fictional writing that has to evoke a picture in the reader's mind. So that's the basic goal you have as a writer if you write fiction. And it's hard, of course it's hard. It's quite as hard, I would say, that the paintings is out of your imagination, but I could say that writing can be even harder. And you can do writing in many ways actually. You can start your writing by going to the real world and just looking at things and inspecting them and kind of, what's that word for description? Describe those things. For example, in a notebook, just as they are, and then add something to them from your imagination. Or you can just go from your imagination, but that's more challenging. You can start an exercise where you take a notebook and a pen and just go out somewhere and stop and log what you see in the notebook. We will learn better description, but you might not learn better writing. So that's our problem. That's our problem. Yeah, I believe I have went through some exercises that were, you know, quite kind of challenging actually in creative writing to go through, and it's kind of this way of how would I say it, where you're just when you're just playing around with the words and you just think about the words on themselves versus trying to create versus trying to use those words. The way you use words, do you use your words just as an end to the means, kind of like a vehicle or spaceship or something like that? Or do you use those words as just as they are, in a more kind of inspective and analyzing sense? Is your writing closer to abstraction than representation? So, for example, if we so it's about style. It's really all about style. Do you know that book? What's the book called? The Basics of Style or something like that. You know that you know, small sliver of a book that deals with writing style. It's a very great book to read if you want to understand style more deeply. I have to reread it at some point, and I have to kind of review it for you. The elements of style or something like that. It's really all about style. So if you think about, for example, science fiction uses words as a vehicle. Realistic writing uses words as a way to invoke that which already is. Poetry uses words more like an abstraction. So if you think about for example this if you think about abstract painting is more like poetry. And for example, if we think about realism in painting, the realist painters, for example, Ivan Sishkin, you know, a person that likes realistic painting would like realistic writing. And science fiction is like realism combined with a completely different type of mindset. So if you really want to like be a science fiction writer, reading these writers and, you know, learning from these writers is probably a bad idea, because science fiction writers use words in a completely different way. So we are all of these three, and then there's nonfiction writers uses words to transmit knowledge and also ideas and understandings. And this is kind of different, you know, because you have to understand that this stuff, realistic writing. Let's start with nonfiction. Actually, we're gonna describe all of these over here. We're gonna take these again over here, and we're gonna elaborate. So nonfiction writers uses words to transmit knowledge and also ideas and understandings. What I mean by this is that we have to kind of, yeah. So nonfiction writers use words to transmit knowledge and also ideas and understandings. So this kind of happens. This happens like this: the writer senses or comes in contact with something, then he takes that, processes it, and puts it on the page as the understandings of the writer himself. It might be related to physiology, it might be related to philosophy, or any other subject that has been written in a non-fiction book. So this is why you read non-fiction, you know. This is why you read non-fiction. And the poetry, the writer comes in contact with something inside or outside of himself and tries to tell that same thing with a different kind of style. And it doesn't have to be true or the fact. It's a way to talk about that, whatever it is. Poetry can also be imaginative. So this is more like abstract painting. The poet is really an like the poet and the abstract painter are really close to each other in terms of like what they do in the brain, you know, and that's what I want to go over here. So then there's science fiction. Uses words of vehicle. We could talk also about fantasy, but I believe that I have the least amount of understanding. Of course, I have written fantasy, but it's kind of a different thing. So realistic writing uses words as a way to invoke. Well, yeah, the realist writer sees something and tries to recreate that, whatever it is, in words, kind of like translating the observations into words. So I have been doing this actually lately, that I have just went out with my notebook and to various places and just written, you know, what I see, you know, and even observing like human beings in places, you know, where they don't really understand what I'm doing, and you know, just observing them and just, you know, telling like putting it into words what I see, and it's fun, but at the same time it's in no way I think kind of, you know, literature as art. If we talk about literature as art, I would feel that science fiction is that and poetry is that, and then the non-fiction can be close to that sometimes, but usually it's not. So when you think about like what kind of writing do you like, you have to understand that these are almost different arts, you know. These are almost different arts. So science fiction uses words as a vehicle. Okay, here we come to a really like hard territory. Science fiction writers have to use ideas and what has been written in the non-fiction realm and take all of that and bend and split the words so they can be used to recreate something new. And what I'm doing right now, for example, is that I'm not writing in that way. Here I'm kind of writing as you know, as this, you know, as a non-fiction, you know, as my own these are my own ideas, you know, and I like to talk about my own ideas about stuff, and I do that a lot, and I have gained some traction, you know, through YouTube, through talking about my own ideas, and I feel that it's great. But at the same time, that I feel that this stuff is kind of the most challenging and hardest and the most kind of satisfying thing that I have done through using words. And this is kind of, you know, I feel that, yeah, this is kind of great, but I would never, you know, kind of kind of blow my horn about doing this kind of stuff to anybody. But it's kind of great. It's the same. It's just the same. It's just the same way I feel about realistic painting and drawing. That it's not anything amazing, even though it can be pretty amazing. It can be amazing that people can do this, but I feel that it's much more amazing that people can do something like this, for example. This is hard, you know. That's why it's called hard science fiction. It's hard. It's fucking hard actually to write science fiction. Like really hard. So poetry. This is. I feel that if you are a starting writer, you can't start over here. You know, this requires such a freaking deep understanding of words and that kind of stuff that you can never start over here. And you can become a poet. You know, that's not where you start. You start with realism or fiction. You know. Or like you start with realistic writing or this kind of stuff, or actually you might start with just your ideas about things. Yeah, then we're gonna I think wrap this stuff up over here by just, you know, talking little bit about what the fantasy writer does. The fantasy writer uses words to evoke realism with something added, and taking that usually into the history and to the past. So we always have to, like, if we talk about this a little bit more deeply over here, we always have to start with the current moment, how things are in the current moment. And usually the great writer has to live a bit differently than anybody and everybody else around him to kind of gain a different kind of viewpoint on that current reality, whatever it might be, and use that viewpoint to create fiction. So otherwise you will just end up with how things are, and that's journalism, and I won't even like talk about that. Here, realistic writing, you know, I'm not talking about I'm not talking about journalism. That's kind of that's writing that I don't want to do, and I'm not really interested in at all in the people that do journalism. You know, I don't care about journalism. I'm just gonna say about that, but. This is where we are trying to like go if we want to write fiction. So it's kind of like if your goal is to become a journalist, probably my channel is not very good for you to become a journalist. Yeah, I can probably help you in some things, but yeah, so I'm not gonna talk about that. They say that the media and the journalists kind of lie, and you might also say that the painters lie. But of course, you know, it's an illusion. It's an illusion. It's not the real fucking thing. But if you are good at it, you know, it might, you know, go off as the real thing. But if you are a writer, you know that it's all bullshit anyway. So what kind of illusion are you trying to create? For example, I have tried to kind of combine YouTube videos. Let's start going into the realm of the. I have been trying to combine YouTube video making with this stuff. I've been trying to combine poetry or poetical use of words. Not froze. Okay, so I think that's finished. You know, I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm going to talk to you about this in the future in one of my videos, but this was kind of the screenplay for that video, you know, so to say. And I have at the moment a lot of pain in my left hand, so I can't write like the traditional way with fountain pens anymore. So or at the moment at least. So I'm going to upload this for you, and I'm going to just, you know, it's a very raw thing, but I hope you gain some kind of understanding about writing in general through this. Thanks for watching.